Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Terre, Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams. But we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other.
I would like to reflect this morning on the first principle of the seven of Unitarian Universalism. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And the comment on this is from the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker. Reverence and respect for human nature is at the core of Unitarian Universalist faith. We believe that all the dimensions of our being carry the potential to do good. We celebrate the gifts of being human, our intelligence and capacity for observation and reason, our senses and ability to appreciate beauty, our creativity, our feelings, and emotions. We cherish our bodies as well as our souls. We can use our gifts to offer love, to work for justice, to heal injury, to create pleasure for ourselves and others. Our opening words today are number 465, and we will be splitting this reading, who is by Wendell, who is the focus of the service today, into two parts. And we will be stopping at an old forest will stand phrase. The wisdom to survive. If you will have the wisdom to survive, to stand like slow-growing trees on a ruined place, renewing and enriching it, if we will make our seasons welcome here, asking not too much of earth or heaven, then a long time after we are dead, the lives of our lives will their houses strongly placed upon the valley sides, fields and gardens rich in the windows, the river will run clear as we will never know it, and over it bird song like a canopy. On the levels of the hills will be green meadows, stock bells in noon shade. On the steeps where greed and ignorance cut down the old forests, an old forest will stand, its rich leaf fall drifting on its roots. The opening hymn, number 338.
Alive and greets the morning sun with glee.
Transitional Words, please return back to 465. If we will have the wisdom to survive, the veins of forgotten springs will have opened. Families will be singing in the fields. In their voices, they will hear a music risen out of the ground. They will take nothing from the ground they will not return, whatever the grief at parting. Memory, native to this valley, will spread over it like a grove, and memory will grow into legend, legend into song, song into sacrament. The abundance of this place, the songs of its people and its birds, will be health and wisdom and indwelling light. This is no paradisal dream. Its hardship is its possibility. Wendell Berry. I am delighted to introduce, as always, Bill Breeden.
I'm delighted to be here again. And I just have to say that during our moment of silence, the greatest silence in the world is the sound of children. So I'm so happy she was with us today. There is no better silence. The wisdom to survive. As I thought about being with you again, the call came to get the sermon title and other pertinent information at a time when I was preparing to get ready for a journey into dark places by a doctor into my body this last week, which has to be done every once in a while, where they boldly go where no one wants to go again. And so I asked Betsy just to pick the songs. I would have never picked that song, I Seek a Spirit of a Child. I've never sang it before. I've looked at it a couple of times. I always thought, well, that's kind of, it's not hard to sing at all. It just looks weird because it changes time 2 or 3 times. But I've never sang that song from the hymnal. And I want to thank Betsy. Beautiful song. As I thought about being with you again, I was struck by the feeling that I probably said all I have to say many times over in the years I have been gathering with this congregation. First in a handball court, I think. We may have been with Lucille at one time. I know Lucille had, we were here, she had a copy of our original music that we did with the Breeden's band, and I wish I had the original copy of that again because I don't. But she had one for years and years, and she was a strong supporter of the work we were doing in peace and justice issues in those days. Who else was here at the handball court? There's 2, 3, 4 of us. Yeah, I remember meeting in the handball court over there. And I actually enjoyed that because handball was my game of choice in college so many years ago. I played handball religiously, and it was at a religious college as well. And handball is one of those things we could do. I even watched the national championship of handball in the Nashville, Tennessee YMCA in 1971, I think it was. A man named Paul Haber. And handball was a game of doctors and lawyers and gentlemen and justices and people. It was a game of wealthy people, mostly in the 60s and 70s. And along came a guy named Paul Haber, who was from Czechoslovakia, an immigrant, a working class guy, and he just began destroying everybody in the handball community. Nobody could beat him. And they didn't like him because he set up shop when they had their tournaments. He would be at the bar across the street and come over to play his thing after being at the bar for a few hours and beat the doctors and the lawyers. And he was sort of like the Jimmy Connors of tennis. He wasn't a very nice player, but he was a great player. And the Handball Association of America put up in 1970 a $25,000 reward to anybody who could beat Paul Haber in the championship because they were so embarrassed by his behavior. And Doc Benham, one of the gentlemen of the sport, was in the championship match with Haber. And they played, I think, 5 games in the championship match. And the first game came in, and Doc Benham beat Haber pretty easily, like 21-7 or something like this. And we were in the upper court watching, and I was kind of amazed. I'd never seen anybody this good, for one thing. And I'd heard about Paul Haber, so a couple of friends and I went down to watch this game. He got beat 21-7, and in handball you can call a timeout and you have like 15 minutes between games. He ran across the street back to the bar that he started in, had a couple shots of whiskey, came back and beat Haber 3 straight games by a score of something like 21-6 and 7, just mercilessly beat him. And so he kind of became the working class hero of handball. And I was excited to see that championship. But that has nothing to do with what I'm going to say today. Whenever I feel at a loss for a starting point, I go back to some of my favorite literary voices looking for a kind of a diving board from which to jump into the water. And I need something, to stand on and gather the courage to speak again. As you probably know, one of the most common phobias is glossophobia, which is a fear of public speaking. It's said to affect as many as 4 out of 10 Americans. For those affected, speaking in front of a group can trigger feelings of discomfort and anxiety, be accompanied by uncontrollable trembling, sweating, and a racing heartbeat. And one can also have the overwhelming urge to run away. I had those feelings a long time ago. As a 15-year-old wannabe preacher, in a tent revival or in a church, a Nazarene church in those days. But really, I really did want to run away the first few times. It scared me to death, but everybody said I was supposed to be a preacher, so I did it. My twin brother also did it a couple of times, but he didn't like to preach. It kind of scared him more than it did me, I think, even though he's an extrovert and I'm an introvert. But he was a great singer. And so he would start singing, and people would get blessed and start running the aisle, and somebody would come to the altar, and that was the end of the service. He didn't have to preach. But I had to preach. I didn't really have the courage to sing the way Darrell did in those days. But one of the things I could do in those days, at 15 years old, is just fall back on the old stories I'd heard all my life. At camp meetings and tent revivals, my pappy sang in revivals. Off and on, we went to church 5-6 nights a week, many times during the summer. Pappy would come home from the gypsum plant, change clothes, and we'd be off to church. And it was a great time. I've probably told you about the time when we ran a camp meeting down near Sullivan, Indiana. There used to be a place called the Lighthouse Tabernacle. It had been a theater in the old days. And the holiness people took it over after the theater closed down. They chased the devil out, they said. Took it over from Satan, because we couldn't go to movies in those days. That was Satan's house. Turned it into a tabernacle, and Pappy, my dad, was singing an old song called When They Ring Those Golden Bells. And it talks about getting to heaven when they ring those golden bells for you and me. It's a beautiful old song, just a tearjerker. And people would just run the aisles and shout and sing when Pappy sang. And he always made my twin brother and I sit in the front row, and so he could watch us, so we behave ourselves. We was like 6 years old, 7 years old. And this old guy started walking back and forth in front of us, right in front of us on the front row there, sitting like this, going back and forth. And we were watching him, my eyes were wide open. He looked to be 80. He probably wasn't older than I am, but when you're 6 years old, this is old. And he was all bent over, just walking, striding. And suddenly he took off, and in the theater, there was the old wooden seats that folded up. Remember the rows of wooden seats? He jumped and ran the back of those streets all the way to the back of the tabernacle and all the way back down the front and landed right in front of us. And we're just sitting there with our mouths open, freaked out. And he looked at me and he said, "I can't help it, boys. It's just this new pair of shoes." Now, I've said for many years, that's the kind of religion I want. I want a religion that gives me a new pair of shoes once in a while, that makes me feel good. I don't want a religion that scares the hell out of me. I don't want a religion that condemns me. I don't want a religion that makes me hate others or fear others. I want a religion that feels like a new pair of shoes. Or maybe putting on an old pair of shoes that you find in a closet after several years, and they just feel very comfortable. But I don't know why I brought that up today either, to be honest with you. What I did in those early preaching days is I just reached back and grabbed the sermons or the stories that I'd heard all my life as a child, as a 15-year-old preacher. All I had to do is repeat those stories, because every evangelist, every preacher had stories, and every one of them told them like they happened to them personally, and they were all the same. And I always wondered as a kid, wow, this happens all the time, these guys. But then when I started preaching, I used the same stories because it was a lot easier. After all, plagiarism, the verbal plagiarism, and lying can be justified in that setting because you're trying to save souls from hell. You can say anything you want if you're trying to save souls from hell. And looking back through the lens of how many years now, it's really difficult that Bill Breeden never existed to believe that, but it did. I'm thankful to say this morning that I no longer have to worry about souls in hell. I don't have to worry about anybody's soul here this morning, because I wouldn't know what to do with it. You can't take a soul out and play with it. You can't play handball with it. You can't play chess. You can't play cribbage with it, as Glenda and I have been locked into doing for the last how many months now. We played cribbage on me every night, and she was beating me mercilessly for several months, but I'm catching up. It's comforting to know that I am not responsible for your soul. So I started out this week early with the words of Wendell from the back of our hymnal. And I'll tell you, if you don't have this hymnal at home, you ought to buy one. Take it home with you, because there's some really good stuff in this hymnal. And there's stuff in here that you could sit down and read some night and feel like you've really got some wisdom to go to bed with, or in the morning to rise with. And I decided I just wanted to kind of take some of those words and look at them. If we have the wisdom to survive. If we have the wisdom to survive. If you notice, that poem changes. It starts out as if we have, and then down there at the second column, it starts saying they will. They will. If we have the wisdom to survive, they will take nothing from. Who's the they? One of them is here with us, blessing us this morning. One of us has already awakened our spirits when we were silent. They are the ones who will reap what we sow. They are the ones that will make the difference, who will change, who will find ways of retrieving the ruined ground. One of the things that we did on our land, and by the way, let me just mention Denise's book again. You can get this book online. It's called Making It All Right. Or you can make a nice little beautiful drive to Spencer, Indiana, to the Juniper Gallery, which is one of the finest little art galleries you'll ever see. And she has signed copies of Denise's book. It'll save you on shipping. And so it's been her bestseller item for several months now. And if you drive over today, we'll be home. You're only about 3 miles from our house, and you're welcome to come over and sit at the lake for a while if you like. So we'll be there. Just give us a call and figure out how to get to us. It's pretty easy. It's a really good read, and she's a wonderful writer. It's a page turner, and as I may have told you before, Glenda's mother, 94-year-old holiness woman, read it from front to cover and said she couldn't quit reading it. And it's got some explicit sex in it and some words about religion that's very different from her life. I was really proud of her to be able to read my daughter's book, her granddaughter's book, and appreciate the writing in it. And feel, as Denise said, she wrote this book to honor a class of people that is ignored in literature too often. A class of people, a farming community in southern Indiana, and she really does honor the work and the spirit of those people in this book, and so I'm proud of it. If we have the wisdom to survive, they will They will take nothing from the ground that they do not give back, whatever the grief in parting. Memory native to this valley will spread over it like a grove, and memory will grow into a legend, and legend into song, and song into sacrament. I believe in legends. I believe in songs. I believe in sacraments. I don't believe sacraments have anything to do with the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth, although his life was a sacrament in a sense that he gave for his people. I don't think sacraments come from priests or popes or ministers. I think sacraments come from our own memories of what is valued in our lives. And I hope that we will try to remember why we are here. Why do we come together? Sometimes we have good dinners and things like that, but we come together to try to make the earth a sacrament, to try to make everything sacred, and try to change the way this world is. And I tell you, I haven't been watching near as much TV. Partly it's because we're playing cribbage all the time, but I pretty much have dropped out of watching the Morning Joe and that ranting bunch of liberals, or not very liberal, but or any of the ranting on either side. I'm just not really interested in hearing it anymore. It doesn't do anything for my soul. It doesn't feed me anything that I need. It just brings up all this negativity constantly. And I've come to believe, I really believe there's far more love in the world than there is hate. I believe right here in Terre, Haute, Indiana, right here in southern Indiana, there's Red State, there's far more love than there is hate in the world. And yet if we get locked into these screens, whether it's on our computer or our television, if we get locked into this media stream all the time, most of what we see is craziness. We don't see the beauty all around us. We don't really breathe in the love that is there. Think about it. When you leave your house every day, going to the grocery store or whenever you leave your house, whenever you drive through Terre Haute or you drive through the country, how many times do you see people beating people up? You don't see it. Occasionally it happens, there's no question about it. But you see kindness far more than you see love, than you see hate. You see kindness far more. The hate stands out because it's so unusual. When you go to the grocery store, most of the time you don't see people beating their children, although occasionally it happens. You don't see people arguing all the time. Most of the time we're surrounded by people getting along. And yet we tend to, as a culture, to thrive on the violence. 95% of the protesters after George Floyd was killed were peaceful protesters. The overwhelming majority of demonstrations in this country were peaceful demonstrators. But they focus on the fires, they focus on the looters or whatever. They focus on the shooting. They don't focus on the peace. And I think sometimes we need to remember, we need to have the wisdom to really view the world as it really is. The world really is a community doing relatively well most of the time. Right now, the story in Gaza is heavy for me. When I went to Palestine in 2004, a group of young people invited me to go with them on a peace mission to the West Bank primarily, and a fact-finding mission. And even in the West Bank and along the wall, the overwhelming experience we had there were experiences of people helping one another, not hating one another. The overwhelming experience in that violent place was peaceful more than violent. But we see the violence. What is going on now in Gaza is a direct result of the millions and millions and millions per day we give Israel to separate that land, to make an apartheid state in the Middle East. And so it's our dollars that are paying for Gaza. And it's kind of bizarre. You see, if you watch what's going on, you see the pictures of the missiles that Israel is using to destroy buildings in Gaza. Every one of those missiles costs up to $30 to $40 million. And they're fighting people who have a $50 missile launcher. $50 little tubes out in the desert. The absurdity of it all is that they're spending so much money to fight a small enemy when peace would be much cheaper. And yet the merchants of war keep feeding it constantly, and the merchants of war in America feed it here. There's an interesting interview that's going to be on, by the way, on Thursday, May 20th. It's at a website called ritualwell.org, Ritual Well. And it's a book talk by a Rabbi, Haviva Ner David, and Amy Gottlieb. I invite you to check it out. Right before Barry's part in here on the wisdom to listen is a little poem that's entitled "And Then," number 464, and it was written by Judy Chicago. And how many religious hymnals do you think have a poem by Judy Chicago in it? We get everybody. Listen to this. And by the way, the actual title of this poem is called the Merger Poem. And if you look up that Merger Poem, you will find this ritual org, because they use that poem in their website. And then all that has divided us will merge, and then compassion will be wedded to power. And then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind, and then both men and women will be gentle, and then both women and men will be strong, and then no person will be subject to another's will, and then all will be rich and free and varied, and then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many, and then all will share equally in the earth's abundance, and then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old, and then all will nourish the young, and then all will cherish life's creatures, and then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth, and then everywhere will be called Eden once again. If we have the wisdom to survive, they will, and then this. I'm glad we have dreamers among us. I've met Wendell Berry, had a chance to visit with him in Bloomington a couple of years ago, and a wonderful human being to visit with, just a common farmer poet from Kentucky. Never met Judy Chicago, but I would love to. I'm glad we have these dreamers among us, these poets that can give us an idea of what it really means to dream, of what it really means to think possibilities can happen, that we are not doomed to a world of absurdity and hatred and violence. There's another poem, just back up, another writing just before Judy Chicago's, 463. I'm glad they grouped these three together. Adrian Ritz says, "My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world." Those with no extraordinary power, perversely with no power, reconstitute the world. How ridiculous is it that we really believe we can change the world? And yet how absurd is it to not believe it? Because in fact, we are part of this world. This is who we are. And if you want to change the world, start right here. If you want to change the world, start right here. Start right here by tomorrow morning, not getting up angry, but getting up kind. You've seen these signs around that say, "Just be kind"? And I see these back during the Trump eras. You saw some in Owen County. Saw an awful lot of Trump signs. You still do a few, not near as many as you used to. And you could get depressed driving around. watching these, and all of a sudden I saw these signs pop up. Just be kind. That was started by a child in Columbus, Indiana. Came up with that idea. Just a kid in Columbus, Indiana said, let's make a sign, say, just be kind. You can order them now. Just be kind. Try it. Try in the midst of your anger sometimes, when you're really PO'd, when you really can't stand the world you live in or can't stand the person in front of you, try being kind. And what you'll find is you can be happy. And I believe, as Lucretius did, Thomas Jefferson said, if I'm anything, I'm a Lucretian. I believe, as Lucretius did, back before Jesus came along, that happiness is the highest virtue. That happiness is not only possible, but we are responsible for it. It is our responsibility, not just our right to be happy, it is our responsibility to be happy. And I know there's such thing as clinical depression, don't get me wrong. I know there's such things as mental illness and other things that can cause persons to not be happy. But it is within our power as human beings to rise every day and be kind. And I'll tell you, you're a lot happier when you're kind than when you're PO'd. You know, think about it. Think about the times you're happy. It's not when you're ready to punch somebody out. It's not when you're ready to call someone a name. Think about when you're happy. It's when you can help. It's when you can give. That's what brings happiness. Jesus taught it's more blessed to give than to receive. That's no military secret. It's the truth. You feel better when you're helping someone. You feel happier than when you're hating someone. The end of Barry's closing words. This is no paradisal dream. Its hardship is its possibility. When I say that happiness is your responsibility, when I say we are held to that responsibility, I don't mean to say it's easy. I think sometimes hatred is a lot easier than loving. Loving can be difficult, but the reward so much overwhelms what you get out of hating. You will find yourself a more human being, a happier human being, if you can set aside that hatred. I've told you before that meme back during the Trump years, somebody posted a meme of Donald Trump coming in a kitchen door and it said, what would your first words be? And when I saw that, I said, I hope it would be, can I get you something to drink? I really would. If I meet him face to face, I don't want to hate him. I want to try to help him. I don't know that he's helpable, to be honest with you, but I would try. Because I get nothing out of hating him except feeling bad. That is no paradisal dream. Its hardship is its possibility. We used to sing a song, came from Harry Chapin's Cotton Patch Gospel, I think. It isn't easy growing up to be Jesus. It isn't easy growing up to be Jesus, with no steady job and no steady girl. You ain't got time to worry about those little things in life when you're supposed to be out saving the world. Well, it wasn't easy for Jesus, and it ain't gonna be easy for us. But you ain't got time to worry about those little things in life that mess up your whole day. You ain't got time to worry about those things when you're supposed to be out saving the world, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. That's how absurd this idea of universalism is. We're supposed to be saving the world. We're supposed to be welcome here. And then John Lunsford, by the way, he's down there in the Caribbean. If I had the power, I would sentence him to at least a couple months in purgatory for posting all those beautiful pictures up here, especially when we were going through his cold spells. But, you know, purgatory, you can get out of that. But we're supposed to be out saving the world. And the best way to do that is by loving the world. Loving the world. One other poet, brilliant man that I have come to learn to love his music. I think his greatest poet, songwriter of our time was Leonard Cohen, and who died, by the way, on the same day as my older sister died of COVID. And I kind of hope they met up somewhere. I kind of hope they're dancing up there somewhere to his music. It's coming through a hole in the air from those nights in Tiananmen Square. It's coming from the feel that this ain't exactly real. Or it's real, but it ain't exactly there. The war against disorder, from the sirens night and day, from the fires of the homeless, from the ashes of the gay. Democracy is coming to the USA. This was written in his hopeful times. Democracy is coming to the USA. It's coming through a crack in the wall and the visionary flood of alcohol, from the staggering account of the Sermon on the Mount, which I don't pretend to understand at all. It's coming from the silence on the dock of the bay, from the bay, brave, the bold, the battered heart of Chevrolet. Democracy is coming to the USA. It's coming from the sorrow in the street, the holy places where the races meet, to determine from the homicidal bitching that goes down in every kitchen, to determine who will serve and who will eat. From the wells of disappointment where the women kneel to pray, from the grace of God in the desert here and the desert far away, democracy is coming to the USA. The chorus of this song goes again and again. It says, sail on, O mighty ship of state, to the shores of need, past the reefs of greed, through the squalls of hate. Sail on, sail on, sail on. To the shores of need, past the reefs of greed. We have, and I've said this many times before, we live in a country with an economy of greed, not an economy of need. And I believe we can change that. I believe the young people are changing that. I really do. I believe young people all over this country are calling for us old folks to wake up to a new day. The democracy is coming. It's coming to America first, the cradle of the best and the worst. It's here they got the reins and the machinery for change, and it's here they've got the spiritual thirst. It's here the family's broken, and it's here the lonely say that the heart has got to open in a fundamental way. Democracy is coming to the USA. Coming from the women and the men. Oh, baby, we'll be making love again. We'll be going down so deep, the river's going to weep and the mountain's going to shout, amen. It's coming like the tidal flood beneath the lunar sway, imperial, mysterious, in amorous array. Democracy is coming to the USA. And I'm sentimental, he says, if you know what I mean. I love the country, but I can't stand the scene. And I'm neither left nor right. I'm just staying home tonight, getting lost in that hopeless little screen. But I'm stubborn as those garbage bags that time cannot decay. I'm junk, but I'm still holding up this little wild bouquet. Democracy is coming to the USA. I really hope that we as American citizens, and most of us here I think are, and all of us in this room, I hope that we can regain our understanding of what democracy means. It does not mean men or women being 100 billionaires. It does not mean that 10,000 children die every week of hunger while billionaires build more yachts than ever before. It does not mean we have to spend far greater amount killing people, destroying nations, than building nations up. That is not what it means. And I pray, along with Leonard Cohen as he did, that we will sail on to the shores of need, past the reefs of greed, past the squalls, through the squalls of hate. We will sail on, sail on, sail on. I invite you to get up tomorrow morning believing that we can do that. To get up tomorrow morning believing that kindness can overcome hatred every time. Kindness will overcome hatred every time. It may not change reality right then. But for you, in your heart, in your soul, in your mind, and in your body, kindness will do far more than hatred. Just be kind. Just be kind. That's really all we're required. Just be kind. If we have the wisdom to survive, they will take nothing from the ground, they will not return, whatever the grief at parting. Memory, native to this valley, will spread over it like a grove, and memory will grow into legend, legend into song, song into sacrament. The abundance of this place, the songs of its people and its lands will be health and wisdom and indwelling light. This is no paradisal dream. Its hardship is its possibility. Its hardship is its possibility, and you have the strength to do it. It is in you. It is part of you. Just be kind. Blessed be. Our closing hymn is another song that I don't know. I thank Betsy for bringing these songs up that I don't know. It is 132, Bright Those Jewels.
Bright the jewels of the skies, which in sable darkness glow, brighter in compassion's eyes, are the silent tears which flow. Sweet the fragrance from the fields, where abundant spices grow. Sweeter far is that which yields comfort to the sick and low. Grateful are those gentle dews on the greening grass which fall. Far more grateful what renews comforts to the poor who call.
Our closing words. I shall take my voice wherever there are those who want to hear the melody of freedom, or the words that might inspire hope and courage in the face of despair and fear. My weapons are peaceful, for it is only by peace that peace can be attained. The song of freedom must prevail. Paul Roberson, our congregational benediction.
May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore.
Go in peace, know that you are loved, and that your life is sacred. Blessed be.